Hi, everyone. I'm running a little bit late, but I am here. Apologies for that. Let's get into this beautiful reading. Chapter 6. It ain't a thing. Disease as process. My name is Angela Pose for those of you that do not know me, and I am a trained therapist in compassionate inquiry, Dr. Gabor Mate's psychotherapeutic modality, and we are sharing every Friday about his wonderful book. There's a quote: "Cancer is no more a disease of cells than a traffic jam is a disease of cars. A lifetime study of the internal combustion engine would not help anyone to understand our traffic problems. A traffic jam is due to a failure of the normal relationship between driven cars and their environment, and can occur whether they themselves are running normally or not." Sir David Smithers, The Lancet, 1962. The, formerly known as Eve Ensler, rose to fame in the 1990s as the author of the Vagina Monologues, the play the New York Times called probably the most important piece of political theater of the last decade. Her blockbuster stage success has given rise to a life of activism. A fearless advocate for and defender of women's rights, she has traveled worldwide, witnessed the bloody aftermath of mass rapes and misogynist brutality in Bosnia and the war-torn Democratic Republic of the Congo. The political is personal for V. In her heart-rending yet triumphant memoir of surviving life-threatening stage 4 uterine cancer in the body of the world, she poses a question of stunning frankness, and insight. Do I have a rape cancer? From an early age and over many years, her father sexually violated her, a chronic assault on which was superimposed severe emotional abuse and later terrifying physical violence. All the while, her mother, hobbled by the legacy of her own childhood suffering, remained oblivious and or silent. The child Eve felt she was betraying, quote unquote, her mom by having an affair with her own father. As a child, when your father incests you, you feel you were the betrayer, she told me in an online interview. And my mother hated me for it. She hated me for how much he adored me. Toxic self-blame is one of the torments imposed on the traumatized child. For much of her life, V loathed herself, and so as so many victims of early abuse end up doing. How did I get it? She writes about the onset of her cancer. Was it worrying every day for 57 years that I wasn't good enough? Was it the pleasure to feel Madison Square Garden with 18,000 or the Superdome with 40,000? Was it the line of 200 women repeated in hundreds of small towns for many years after each performance, after each speech, women lined up to show me their scars, wounds, warrior tattoos? What is suburban lawn? Was it suburban lawn pesticides? Was it my first husband sleeping with my close friend? Was it sleeping with men who were married? Was it enough? Was it not enough boundaries? Was it too many walls? When I asked her what she thinks now, V prefaced her answer with a laugh, perhaps sardonic. I think it's a combination of all of the above, she said. But I think that if there were one underlying reason why I got sick, it was unreckoned. I hadn't gone deep enough in processing my trauma. I'll repeat this. I think that if there were one underlying reason why I got sick, I hadn't gone deep enough in processing my trauma. She then made a profound observation about the nature of illness itself. A disease is not like a thing. It is energy flow, it's current. It is evolution or devolution that occurs when you are not awake and connected. And trauma is essentially running your life. I think it's such a mistake to identify it as a thing because that makes it hard matter, when it's in fact a much more psychological, spiritual, and emotional condition. What do you think about this, friends? I am very interested in your comments. This hard-won perspective raises some unfamiliar, potentially fruitful questions. What if, she writes, when you got sick, you weren't a stage of a disease, but in a process? What if when you got sick, this is a very important question, you weren't a stage of, and you name your disease, but in a process? And cancer, just like having your heart broken or getting a new job or going to school, we're a teacher. What if rather than being cast out and defined by some terminal category, you were identified as someone in the middle of a transformation that could deepen your soul, open your heart? The survival of a near-terminal diagnosis owed much to the heroic efforts and skills of modern medicine, including multiple complex surgeries and chemotherapy. But that's not all that saved her, as she sees it. V herself generated a powerful complement to those interventions in the way that she approached healing, a willingness to experience disease not as a thing, an external enemy, but as a process that encompasses all of her life, present, past, future, and ultimately, even as a teacher. How powerful it is when we come to understand that illness is here as a process because it is teaching something to us. When we shift our perspective of illness to this one, which is more comprehensive, more encompassive of compassion and love and wisdom, how can it really change your life? It will, and it will do it at all levels. Beyond the war metaphor, we are used to seeing disease as a thing to get rid of or a foe to battle against, as for example in the war of cancer, which war, for the record, has been far more triumphant. Someday we tell ourselves, with enough research, we as a society will beat cancer and wipe it out. Right? We keep just waiting for that scientific breakthrough. In the meantime, we maintain a tenaciously defined attitude as expressed in the viral hashtag F word cancer. Our everyday language gives voice to our combative stance. We hear of a friend or a family member who is battling MS or some other illness. They will either prevail in the struggle or else succumb. It may be that these martial metaphors are so appealing because their force matches our feelings of anger and despair, but does not, however, make them helpful. In a previous work, I quoted the Canadian oncologist Karen Gilman, a leading breast cancer specialist who looks askance at the military depiction of cancer care and research. What happens in the body is a matter of flow. There is an input, and there is an output, she says. And you can control every aspect of it. We need to understand that flow. No, there are things you can influence and things you can't. It's not a battle. It's a push-pull phenomenon of finding balance and harmony, of kneading the conflict forces into one dough. I notice how closely her use of flow mirrors V's language. One woman speaking from medical expertise, the other one from hard-earned, subjective, sourced insight. Beyond the declaration of war, there's another, even more popular class of misapprehension, the clouder view of disease. I have cancer. She has MS. My nephew has ADD. Embedded in each phrase as the unexamined assumption there is an I or someone, distinct and independent from the thing called disease, which is the I has, as in the statement, I have a flat TV screen, for example. Here is my life. and over there is a disease that has encroached upon it. Seen this way, disease is something external with its own nature, existing independently of the person in whom it shows up. Given where that perspective has gotten us, it is time to consider a new one. Are you ready for the new one? We have already glimpsed the countless hormonal, neurological, molecular, immunologic, intracellular, and epigenetic pathways that make our physiology inseparable from our emotional, psychological, spiritual, and social lives. These understanding of trauma and stress as major founds of the process that ultimately came close to killing her is completely aligned with modern science. In a 5 decades long British study that followed nearly 10,000 people from birth until the age of 50, it was found that early life adversity, abuse, socioeconomic disadvantage, family strife, for example, greatly increased the risk of cancer before the mid-century mark. Women who experienced 2 or more such adversities had a double risk with midlife. These findings suggest that cancer risk may be influenced by exposure to stressful conditions and events early on life, wrote the researchers, once more employing the carefully reticent language of suggest and may. To my clinical sensibilities concerned as I am with how people fall ill and or find healing such results, mirrored over and over in multiple other studies, do not suggest. They scream for attention. So an illness is seen as a scream, a call for attention. The disorganizing impact of stress hormones on the immune system as a risk for cancer is far from a scientific secret. We have also seen how stress and trauma are prime drivers of inflammation. Remember, we spoke about this in the last few episodes. Another central gear in the cancer-causing apparatus. Along parallel lines, girls who are sexually and physically abused have far greater risk in adulthood of endometriosis, a painful and often disabling condition that heightens the risk of ovarian cancer and whose origin perplexes conventional medical thinking. Considered from the mind-body, psychoneuroimmunological perspective, the puzzle becomes rather less puzzling. To restate a question essential to our theme, what if we saw illness as an imbalance in the entire organism, not just as a manifestation of molecules, cells, and organs invaded or denatured by pathology? What if we applied the findings of Western research and medical science in a systems framework, seeking all of the connections and conditions that contribute to illness and health? Powerful questions. Such a reframing would revolutionize how we practice medicine. Rather than treating disease as a solid entity that imposes its ill will on the body, we will be dealing with a process, one that can be extricated from our personal histories and the context and culture in which we live. This change in approach has much more to recommend it. And not only because it takes interpersonal biology into account. When we cease to view illness as a concrete, autonomous thing with a predetermined trajectory, and when we have the proper help and a willingness to look both within and without, we can start to exercise agency in the matter. After all, if disease is a manifestation of something in your lives rather than merely their cruel disruptor, we have options. We can pursue new understandings, ask new questions, perhaps make new choices. We can take our rightful place as active participants in the process. How active are you in your healing process, in your health, in your interpersonal relationships? Rather than remain its victims, helpless, but for our reliance on medical miracle workers. And I will close with this. A vast majority of the population blame their conditions, blame the progress of their illnesses and their healings on the professionals. Professionals are here as guides, as people that can assist you, get you back on track in your journey. They are not miracle workers. The only miracle can happen from within. From this perspective, illness is seen as a process that only you can tap into it, you can understand it, and reverse it when you look into your deep, unresolved, as I said, trauma. If you are interested in learning more about this, let me know in the comment section, because I am curious about how this information is landing for you and in your journey. I also wanted to mention that starting on next week, I have good news. I will be mixing this transmission in English and providing a translation in Spanish, because I've been receiving many comments from Latin American or Hispanic speaking people wanting to know about the reading of this book in Spanish. So it will be a bilingual live streaming. I wish you a wonderful weekend, and I'm going to see you guys again next Friday. Take care.